Welcome to Paradigms at paradigms.life, the radio show and podcast that brings you inspiring people with visions of a viable future for life on Earth that includes humans. Hi, I'm Baruch, host of Paradigms. Glad to be here with you. Thanks for tuning in. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. My guest is a musician, a singer, a person of conscience who's made a really remarkable record. It's not her first. It's really beautiful. I think it's going to touch you right where you live, right in your heart. As always, we humans are doing all kinds of beautiful and horrific things here on Earth. It's always been this way, it seems, but the stakes are high right now. We are being threatened, the whole world, with nuclear annihilation because of one person's madness. Human violence, something we have not learned to stop yet. But even facing such a threat, life is still worth celebrating, even the painful parts. So we're going to talk with this remarkable woman and hear some of her new record, and I hope you enjoy. So let's get to it now and meet my guest on this episode of Paradigms. Mamak Khadem, welcome to Paradigms.
Thank you so much, Baruch. It's a pleasure to be a part of this program.
I've been listening to your beautiful record, Remembrance, and watching the videos. I find it all very moving and very deep. It touches deep emotions, and most of it is in a language I don't understand. It doesn't matter. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to the point of making this amazing music, and then let's talk about the record.
Sure. It's my pleasure to share what's behind the record. Remembrance is my fourth solo album. The whole point of this project is about my father, loss of my father. I lost my father about a couple years ago during the pandemic. My father lived back in Iran. He was able to come to the States and whenever he wanted, but, and he tried a couple of times to see if he wants to live here because both of his daughters, me and my sister, were living here. He just couldn't. He admired a lot of things about the American culture, but he still felt like he was rooted in his Persian culture. And he was a writer, a translator. I mean, he knew so many languages and he translated from a few different languages to Persian, but his roots was in Iran. And I understood that, so we were apart. And of course, he comes from a kind of like we're all like come from a socialist point of view. My father, when he was young, he was an activist, and it was like a lot of leftist ideas, and so I've grown up with that mentality, and I admire Bernie Sanders and his ideas. So it's just sort of you can feel like what kind of a family and what kind of a background we've had. And so, anyways, for me, when things had happened in Iran, every time there's like a political situation or executions or, jails and stuff like that with the government that we have, because, I'm pretty sure everybody is aware of the kind of a government that we have in Iran. So all of these news for me, living outside of Iran is always like brought so much frustration that I was not there. I couldn't do anything. So I've always been kind of like vocal in demonstrations and rallies against, in here, of course, in Los Angeles or New York. A couple of times I went to New York and I sang. That's how I showed my solidarity. That's how I showed my concerns and through my music. So, and I've been shown in TVs and, stuff like that. So there was a situation that it was not really safe for me to go to Iran to travel, although I used to go so many, times. But then after the 2009 we call it Green Revolution, which was like amazing, very peaceful, started with a very peaceful rally. And then so many people, died and they were jailed. So I was very vocal at UCLA. We had like thousands of people and I was like singing and getting people to sing and get it out of their system, because everybody was like, what can we do? What can we do? And so anyways, that kind of like put a closed door for my traveling to Iran. And my father he made me promise I will never go back. He was so concerned for me. And he said, even if I die, I don't want you to come. So when he was sick, there was pandemic going on. And at the same time, I had made that promise to him. And I knew that I was going to make him more uncomfortable, because then he had to worry about me on top of that as being sick. So anyways, I ended up like not seeing my father when he passed away. And so it was very difficult for me, because it was like, for many people, pandemic was this what kept us a way to connect with our loved ones. For me, it's like I feel like I've lived in my whole life in a situation like pandemic, where I have all these limitations and not being able to see the people I love, or certain things. When the Trump came, there was so much chaos, all of that stuff. There's always this stuff going on for so many of us immigrants from other countries. And so that was like a really hard time for me. I mean, unbelievable. I saw him and I talked to him. He couldn't talk. And I was just like through WhatsApp, and I'm like, thank God for that. At least like, he can see me. And I wasn't planning on making a record at that time. It's like everything's so dark and we were losing so many people. But then that kind of like gave me a reason for start putting music together. And then when I started it, it was about my dad, but it got more and more broad, where people are dying, there's COVID is killing people. And then it got to a point where I was like, some of the poets and some of the writers and some of the activists in Iran, that I remember how much I felt horrible when they were executed, or going back and remembering some of these other people who were significant in my life, kind of like one after the other, And then, of course, that's how the album came together. And then, Shajarian, Master Shajarian, he was like our best voice that we've had in our history of traditional music. He passed away as well. It's like, every time I just like take a breath, and it's like something else would happen. So that's where this album kind of like was formed. That was the thought behind it. That's the story behind this project.
The music on the record is beautiful. The poetry, the songs, the recitation. There are 2 recitations in English for listeners, and they'll get to hear them, at least one on the show. But the emotion you just described comes across 100%, even if we don't speak the language. The love and the sadness and the
longing and the grief. Yeah.
And there's a bittersweet quality, because there's beauty with the pain. And it seemed to me that for you and I to speak right now, given what's happening in the world, was perfect timing, because the feeling of loss of peace, not that it's been peaceful, it has not been peaceful for my whole life or your whole life, but what's happening now is so brutal and threatening to everyone, and so clearly the product of madness. I mean, all war is the product of madness. All violence ultimately is the product of some kind of madness. But now we are really facing this again.
The thing is, like I was telling my friends last night, we were talking about, we had the COVID thing was at its height of its like worst time. There was no war. Nobody was thinking about war. Nobody was thinking about all this craziness. Now, as soon as, things calm down, here goes again another thing. So it's like, this is a not ending and not ever ending, and it's like, Jesus, by the way, it was Persian New Year was yesterday. So I want to tell you about that. Persian New Year was on the 20th of March, yesterday. We celebrate our New Year on the first day of spring. And so I just also wanted to say Eid Shoma Mubarak, which means Happy New Year to all of your listeners.
Thank you.
Perhaps I should have started my interview.
I think it's great. I love it. There's so many opportunities to celebrate the new year from all the different cultures on earth, and I just love that.
Yeah, me too.
It's so important, even though we talk about all the painful madness and all of that, that we remember to celebrate life.
Exactly. I mean, there's no other way. I mean, because, when you think about it, it's like the more you get into the dark, the darkness, the lower you go. And when you go to that low, now you're adding to the problems. You're not really helping the situation. So the best we can do is to either financially give money, or if we can help physically be there, or at least, make sure that we're positive enough so that we can extend that positivity to other people. So, which is very hard sometimes. Like,
Absolutely. Some days it's harder than others.
yes. Now, one thing that you mentioned that I really, really, I'm so happy to hear that. It's like, I choose to sing in Farsi because I still feel that that's still, after living in this country for so many years, I feel like that's my first language, and there's so much beauty in the poetry of Iranian, mostly like ancient poets. And I'm so happy that there more and more of them are being kind of exposed to the Western world, that I feel like, that's my source, because I didn't write the lyrics, unlike the, songwriting styles here in the Western world, songwriters, like someone who writes it and they put the melody or whatever, vice versa. And that's how the song comes together. But for me, it's always like, I don't want to write it, because once I write it, I feel like it's become very cheap in a way, because, I am so there's so much valuable poetry and writings that I feel like, why should I even like try to write something? So the way this happened is like, I chose the poetry and the poets that were expressing how I felt at the time. In other words, they're talking on my behalf and I'm expressing my feelings through their poetry. It's just so great that I'm doing a good job making sure that even though some of my listeners don't understand the words, but they can still feel it. And that's the most important thing to me. I've always wanted to keep my language, but be able to sing it in a way that I can emotionally express myself, so that my audience and my listener will kind of like pick up on the energy.
Let's talk about this album, Remembrance, because it is just so beautiful.
Thank you.
Tell me about the song Remembrance and why you chose to include it.
I chose Remembrance with the lyrics from Sadi Shirazi's, because the words says, the translation is also here, says, there is not much zest to life without my beloved present. From this fire in my heart, smoke has reached up to my head. So this is a translation, and that's like, you're losing someone. For me, it was like my father. It's like, there's no zest in life without him, and this could be applied to your lover, your father, anything that you love. And the music behind it, it kind of like took me back to like Supertramp and Fleetwood Mac, and music that I used to listen when I came here as a teenager. That was what I used to listen to. And so for me, it was like going back, also kind of like remembering the pain, remembering the anxiety, the pain and the sorrow that I was experiencing while I was listening to that music, because I'd left my country and I was very lonely and I didn't have friends, and blah, blah, it goes on. The list goes on forever. No language, understanding language, fear and all that. So I wanted the instrumentation to represent that period. That music that I used to listen, which was Western music, was comforting for me. So that's how it happens, like, and there's, you hear guitar and
it's throughout the album. I was so impressed by the fusing of Western and Middle Eastern, because you've got some funky bass riffs going in there, and I mean, it's good. It's good. And it's bringing in this other amazing flavor. So beautiful.
Yeah, but I'm glad that you like it. I think that fusion that you were talking about is because I'm a product of a fusion as part of like, coming here when I was a teenager, adapting myself into the culture in here, learning everything that's new here, and then still trying to remember some parts of my culture. And so always, and a lot of traveling for me, and my past projects has to do with a lot of my traveling to Eastern European countries, to some of the other Middle Eastern countries, looking for the commonality, looking for the similarities. I'm always looking for similarities, like, well, like, for example, if this is how the Americans do it when I was, new to this country, how did we do it? Oh, this is so similar to the way we do it back in Iran. Or, oh my God, this is so different. This is totally the opposite of how we do. So this fusion naturally happened in my life. And I think so you can definitely see it in my music. It's like, it's got to be all of the above. Like, that's what makes me, Western, Eastern, all of that.
That's the first part of my conversation with Mamak Khadem. We'll be back with more of that conversation, but first let's hear some of the music from the new record, Remembrance. Here's the title track. You're listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life. That's Remembrance, the title track from Mamak Khadem's new record. Now let's get back to my conversation with Mamak Khadem and learn more about this album and its making and her inspiration. Here's Mamak.
Track number 2 is called Mina. That's the name of a flower in Persian poetry. And I do have all of the translations and explanations about the poets in my website, by the way. So if anybody finds these stories interesting, please go ahead and visit it. The poet on this song number 2, which is Mina, is Sayyid Sultanpur. And Sayyid Sultanpur, I think he died in the early 80s. Yeah, and he was actually executed by the Islamic Republic. The thing, though, is that he was actually jailed because of his political ideas. He's called the poet of the revolution. So you can understand that he's against like left, all these socialism, all of these ideas. He was actually jailed during Shahs, which is the other government prior to Islamic Republic. He was jailed at that time. And so when the revolution happened, he was freed from the jail. Well, actually, he wrote the words, the poetry, when he was in jail at that time during the Shah's regime. And the reason why he wrote that is because Mina is the name of a lady, a woman that was one of the people in the same organization, left group, that was attacked by Shah's Savak regime. It was Savak organization that was like a intelligent or whatever, CIA kind of like the thing. They actually attacked her and a couple other people, and they killed them instantaneously on the spot.
More like KGB.
Yeah, KGB or Mossad or whatever. We have it in Israel, we have it in Iran.
We have them everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah. KGB.
Secret police.
Yeah, secret police that, it was like they would not tolerate the opposition, thoughts of opposition and the younger people being active and wanting fairness and equality and justice for, their people. So anyways, so when he was in jail, he heard about Mina being executed. So this, I have the translation in there. Now, the worst part of the story is that, he was freed because we had a revolution, right? We had like everybody now can be active, can follow their ideologies, whatever ideology you have. And so he was, again, after first or second year of Iranian revolution, things kind of like got really, really weird. And they started to becoming controlling the thoughts. All the leftist groups were being attacked and started jailing people. Anyways, Sayyid Sultanpur was in his wedding with his beloved, and they attacked him and they took him, they jailed him. So it's his wedding is called Blood Wedding. And so that's the story behind that. It's very, very sad. And so this is always like that song. I didn't write that song. We just put a new arrangement to that song. And I know that, when people hear it and say, well, the way you're singing this song is very, very emotional. I said, it's because it brings back all that memory of so many young people that we lost, whether it was that regime or this regime or next regime. It seems like there's no tolerance for ideas and ideology. So that's Mina, and it's a very powerful for Persians. Definitely, they get it.
Pretty powerful stuff. Pretty gutsy for Mamak to even talk about this stuff on the air. Here's the song Mina that Mamak Khadem was just talking about from her new record Remembrance.
درون شب تار بی‌شکوفت گل صبح خنده بر لب گل خورشید کند جلوه بر کوه بلند خنده بر لب گل خورشید وصفش پیک بهار با هزاران گل سرخ بیگمان می آید وصفش پیک بهار با هزاران گل سرخ بیگمان می آید بیگمان می آید بیگمان می آید در گذرگاه شب تار به دروازه گل مینای جوان خون بیفشانده تمام روی دیوار زمان گل مینای جوان خون بیفشانده تمام روی دیوار چشم هست هنوز با سیاه چنگ بر این ماونگ آسمان غرق ستاره است ولی آسمان غرق ستاره است هنوز آسمان غرق ستاره است ولی آسمان غرق ستاره است هنوز آسمان غرق ستاره است ولی آسمان غرق ستاره است هنوز آسمان غرق ستاره است ولی آسمان غرق
That's Mina from the new record Remembrance by my guest, Mamak Khadem. Even not understanding the words, it's powerful. You get the emotion, and the music is glorious, I would say. What do you think? We'd love to see your comments. Let's get back now to my conversation with Mamak Khadem. You're listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life. Let's talk about the song Entangled. Really, again, powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, Entangled is very powerful. The poetry is from Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, who is very, very well known to the Western world at this, this past few years. And it says, one hand holding a cup of wine, one hand caressing my beloved's hair, I yearn to dance in this way in vast open fields. So again, this could be a very romantic, like very epic, like, there's wine and there's this lover's hair and all that. For me, it was like I yearned to dance. And for me, it was like brought the memory of like a lot of women in my country and a lot of like other countries, similar, religious or the countries where women cannot dance or show their hair or whatever. There's all sorts of stuff. Anyways, it just reminded me of like how those women are yearning for just something that is very basic, for being able to move, for being able to show their beauty, for being able to sing and use their voice. So that was my idea behind this. And there's a beautiful video that's done by Sam Javadi, Mr. Sam Javadi, and he really, really made it beautiful. And in his video, it goes beyond this. The star of our video is this really beautiful little girl that is from the Afghani. His parents are from Afghanistan. Very powerful video.
Here is the song Mamak was just talking about, Entangled. And if you get a chance to go to her website or YouTube and watch the video, I strongly encourage you to do so. Mamak Khadem, from her new record Remembrance, Entangled.
میانه میدان
You just heard the song Entangled by Mamak Khadem from her new record Remembrance. Now here's the final part of my conversation with Mamak Khadem. Face to Face, do you really get into some great funky music in there?
Face to Face again, yeah, that's one of my kind of like produced by myself and Chris Votek, my dear friend who plays cello. This is the poetry of Tahireh Qurratul Ain. She was just like from 1817 to 1852. And she was from the Baha'i faith. She was also executed. And again, there's stories and there's stuff in the translation page on my website that people can go to. But she was a woman, and very strong woman. So she was an activist, definitely. And also because of her, she fought for her belief, and she was executed. Anyways, that's she has this beautiful piece of poetry, and I used that poetry, and the melody, the initial melody actually is an Armenian melody that I loved. So I was able to put that poetry into the Armenian melody, and we gave it another kind of like a different go at it with kamanche, which is a fiddle, Persian fiddle in the beginning. And yeah, that's that song.
You're your own kind of musical genius.
I'm not a genius, but I do have my brain goes everywhere. So I'm thankful that I've been, it's been a blessing to be exposed to different types of music. And traveling was always like, for me, is like when I travel, of course I want to go to a new culture, but music is my number one priority to learn about. And so, when you hear so much, these things, like, you might not remember it, but they're there. You just keep accumulating it. You keep like making your repertoire bigger and bigger. So yeah, that song is like, it's very, very, comes from this courageous woman. For her time, she was amazing. And she's very well respected in our culture. That song is called Face to Face.
Let's hear the song, Face to Face, from Mamak Khadem's new record, Remembrance.
صفحه به صفحه لا بلا پرده به پرده تو به تو در دل خویش طاهره گشت و نجاست جاست تو را صفحه به صفحه لا بلا پرده به پرده تو به تو از پی دیدن رخت همچون صبا فتاده‌ام کوچه به کوچه در به در خانه به خانه کو به کو کوچه به کوچه در به در خانه به خانه کو به کو کوچه به کوچه در به در خانه به خانه کو به کو کوچه به کوچه در به در خانه به خانه کو به
From her new record, Remembrance, that's Mamak Khadem with Face to Face. And now here's the final part of my conversation with Mamak Khadem. Then the last song on the record is called Don't Go Without Me.
Yes, that is like, those are the words from Rumi again, Jalaluddin Rumi. It's almost like it came from like, these are my, he understood me, and this is what I wanted to say. And so again, I had the honor to have Coleman Barks. We use his voice in the beginning so that people, there's a translation in there that he actually translated that. And he's a genius. He was really one of the reasons why so many people in the West are following the works of Rumi. To me, he's a Rumi. Coleman and Rumi are like kind of the same soul. But yeah, so it says, Don't Go Without Me. That is the song for my dad. Like, very, very much. It's very simple and very simple and like very straightforward.
Mamak, you have made a beautiful piece of art, really.
Thank you so much. It's really, it inspires me to hear your feedback. I do respect your putting this time together to talk to me and allowing me to share with your listeners my thoughts, who I am. I think we got more into, this interview wasn't just about saying certain things, it's about learning about who I am. And I really, really appreciate that. It's rare. I just hope that I wish you the best of luck in what you're doing. And I hope I get to see you in person soon.
I would love that. And thank you so much. You've said so many important things as we've gone through talking about the songs. It is clear that you are a person of deep conscience. And in this world and with what's happening right now, I guess all we can do is feel what we feel and be as kind as we can, right?
Yes. Yes. At least be good. We don't have to fix other people. We don't have to fix how they think. If we can really work on ourselves, and that I don't by that I don't mean like become so secluded that you don't really get involved, because I think that getting into rallies is very powerful. I think it's getting into communities and doing community work with people is very powerful. I don't really feel like if I just stay home and do all my meditation for the rest of my life, I'm going to be, no, to me, that doesn't make sense. You know, you got to do something. You got to put it into action, you know, or words are just, no, it doesn't make sense. It's good to connect communities together and do whatever we can, in any way, in any forms of art or action. I think that's wonderful.
Mamak, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Mamak Khadem, it was a pleasure to talk with you. It's a pleasure to listen to your music. It's also more than a pleasure. It somehow informs some deep feeling. Thank you so much for being on Paradigms and sharing with us some of your experience and your inspiration and where you're coming from, and for sharing your deep feelings upon the loss of your father with all of us through this music and this beautiful poetry. If you'd like to learn more about Mamak Khadem, check out her other records, see the videos she talked about. Her website is mamakhadem.com, MAMAK-KHADEM.com. Definitely worth checking out. And if you enjoyed this episode of Paradigms, I hope you'll visit our archives at the Paradigms website, paradigms.life, and in iTunes and wherever else you find your podcasts, and now on YouTube. Check out our YouTube channel. Paradigms has a Patreon campaign going, patreon.com/paradigms. It helps to pay the bills, and we appreciate our Patreon sponsors so much. Thank you. I'm going to leave you with one more track from Mamak Khadem's album Remembrance. It's the last one on the album. It's called Don't Go Without Me. And so we'll let the word for the week be remembrance. Let us remember loved ones who've passed, losses that we remember from our lives. And let's celebrate the love that makes those memories so important. Celebrate the lives of everyone. Maybe we can make life on earth peaceful. All right, that's it for this episode of Paradigms. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next time with more inspiring people. Until then, Baruch signing off. We'll see you next time. Be well.
Don't go anywhere without me. Dancing in the ecstasy of leaving, soul of my soul, don't go without me. The two worlds are joyous because of you. Don't stay in this world without me. When I'm with you, this world is a joy, and the other world too. As you travel this world and the other, don't go anywhere without me. I am the night, you are the moon in my empty sky. Don't go without me. You are a rose, I am your thorn. Don't go anywhere without me.
خرامان می روی ای جان جان بی من مرو ای حیات دوستان در بوستان بی من مرو بی من مرو این جهان با تو خوش است و آن جهان با تو خوش است بی من مرو این جهان بی من مباش و آن جهان بی من مرو بی من مرو من شبم تو ماه من بر آسمان بی من مرو تو گلی من خار تو در گلستان بی من مرو 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 بی من
You've been listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life.